This week on Merchants of Change, we've got Jackson Brewer. Jackson played college hockey at Trinity, where he won a national championship, no big deal. He then played professionally in the United States and Australia before transitioning to sales. Today, he works at Toast, a leading restaurant software platform, starting as a BDR and working his way up to his current role as Regional Vice President of Growth Sales. Here he is, Jackson Brewer.
I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder and CEO of The Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes and military veterans into becoming a professional salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change.
What's up, kid? Today on the show, we got Jackson Brewer. Jackson, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
It's great to meet you. We were talking before we hit record how it's kind of wild that we've never met. A couple hockey guys from the Boston area. Jackson, really excited to have you on the show. We started the show because we really wanted to expose the career of sales to the audience that we serve, which are retiring athletes and military veterans. And we really want them to hear from people like them that made that transition successfully and have had great careers since that transition. So from a structure perspective, we'll talk a little bit about your athletic background. Love to kind of learn some lessons from your own transition. And then obviously leave the audience with some great nuggets they can put together, put to use every single day in their new sales career. So we were just talking. You're also a Boston area guy. Grew up playing hockey. Did you play other sports growing up, Jackson?
Yeah. My big other sport was baseball, so I played baseball throughout high school as well.
Nice. And then, hockey was number one. What's your best memory from your hockey career, Jackson? I know that's a big question, but I'm curious to get your take there.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, but luckily enough, in 2015, was able to win a national championship at Trinity College, Division III national championship. So that definitely takes the cake.
That's amazing. Where was that game?
It was at University of Minnesota.
Oh, nice. That's awesome, dude. Because Trinity hosted the Division III Frozen Four this year, right?
Yeah, it was bittersweet. So they got the bid 4 years ago just to be the host, and they assembled a really good team. They won their league, and they got all the way to the finals. And the reason I say it was bittersweet is they lost, but all of the alums were able to go down on the Thursday to the semis where they beat Adrian, and then we went back down again Saturday. It was a huge reunion, and they lost to Hobart. But I've never seen the rink that packed. It's good to see everyone again. They should be really proud of the season. It's tough that they lost that deep on their home ice, but they have a lot to be proud of. And Coach Chris has done an incredible job with that program.
He really has. We do some work with Trinity, so great kids coming out of that program, and I'm sure that barn was electric that night. Now you didn't go right to the working world. You went and played pro hockey, and I understand you played here, but you also played in Australia. Talk to me. Talk to me a little bit about Australian professional hockey. What is that like?
It was interesting. I think the best way to put it was our games were nationally televised, but I was doing my own laundry, right? So it was like the dichotomy was really interesting. They would help set you up with a job. They keep it labeled as amateur so that college players from Australia that play in the States or junior players that play in the States, actually, it might change with the NIL money now that I think about it. So they would pay you under the table, and then they would set you up with a job. And so you could work at the rink, you could do manual labor. And I kind of knew going into that season I wanted to enter the professional world in Boston. That was my last hurrah of my mediocre professional hockey career. And so I got set up at this wealth management firm, and I was making like 150 to 200 cold calls a day, automatic dialer. And that's what I did Monday through Friday. We skated Tuesday, Thursday nights. We'd play at home or hop on a plane Friday night, play 2 games, fly back. So it's kind of a grind, but it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's like sandals and skates because their winter, like our winter is their summer, right? So you're walking out of the rink and it's gorgeous out. Is that right?
Yeah, but we played there. Our season was April to September, so we were playing there in their winter. So my season ended in the SPHL, and about a week later, maybe 5 days later, I hopped on a plane and played over in Sydney. So it was their winter, but their winters are mild in Sydney. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
gets to like mid 50s.
yeah. What an unbelievable experience. Probably my biggest regret is not at least playing like one season in like the spill or, overseas. Just awesome. And I think I know the answer to this question, but like when you think about your hockey career, what do you miss the most?
A lot. I think. I mean, the guys, just being with the guys in the locker. I'm sure everyone says that to you.
Yep.
I think there was like in sales, you can work really hard and you might get a nicer commission check. Or now in my career, I'm seeing people flourish themselves, which is better than a commission check. But there's something to be said about putting the work in all summer with your boys, hot days in Boston, and then having a big night, whether it was at Trinity or professionally. So it's like seeing the hard work come to fruition and doing
Totally.
it on a bigger stage, right? No one's checking out the commission checks on exactly, but there's a lot of people watching you play. So I think seeing the hard work come to fruition in that sort of arena was
Totally.
an awesome feeling.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right on. The first answer is always the locker room, right? Like that's what it's all about. That's why guys like me play, and I'm sure you too play men's league until we can't walk anymore, just for that time after the game with the boys. How do you, what kind of player were you? Like, how would your teammates describe you, Jackson?
Allergic to the D zone probably is the first thing. I don't know. You'd have to ask them, but I definitely try to put my best foot.
Sorry, we'll cut that. Allergic to the D zone.
Keep that in. Keep that in. Hard working, tried to be a positive teammate, and then I've always had very high expectations for myself and the team. So definitely asked and demanded a lot of myself and the team. So I think those are a few things.
That's good, man. That's good. All right, so you're banging the phones in Australia, which, by the way, I absolutely love that. That's an unreal day job while you're playing pro hockey. What was that transition like? Did you know, like coming out of that winter making calls for wealth management? Were you like sold on sales, or were you like did you come back to Boston like, all right, what the hell am I going to do? Where was your head at, and what happened?
Yeah, I think you all deserve a lot of credit for what you're doing because that's a pretty unstable time. It's a little bit of an identity crisis, right? And I wasn't
Big
that
time.
good when I was 25, but I know people that are exiting pro hockey, and I don't know anything about the veteran space, but exiting pro sports in their 30s, and they feel really behind. And I took a year off after high school, 2 years off after college to play, so I was coming out at 25, so I felt behind. I would say the calling and the sales in Australia, it it was hard, right? So I think I came back and I was like, dang, sales is hard. But my mindset shifted when I realized I wasn't really selling a good product. And there are a lot better products, there are a lot better companies. So I knew I had this baseline of understanding how to cold call, ask open-ended questions, drive a conversation, conversion rates, all that. But it was between finance and it was between tech sales. And I think at that point in time, I felt behind versus my peers, and I wanted to make a lot of money. And so that's where my head was at when I got back in September of that was 2017.
This is like kind of a deep question, Jackson, but like I think it's an important one because we ask it. We ask it because listen, you ask any 23 to 26 year old what's important to you in your career, 90% of them are going to say I want to make a lot of money, but I also don't want to work too much, right? But I always like to dig a level deeper. Why was making a lot of money important to you, Jackson? Because like that's a pretty important aspect because sales is hard to your point, and if you don't have that like bigger why, it's gonna suck, right? So like, what was that financial drive for you? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I actually had an interesting upbringing where I went to Rivers from seventh grade to 12th grade, and I was a faculty brat. So my mom taught there, and I went there from basically next to nothing. So both of my parents are in academia. My mom taught at Rivers. My dad worked at MIT for about 25, 30 years. And while we had an amazing upbringing, right, I was rubbing shoulders with some of the richest people in Boston, right? And then guess where I went after Rivers? I went to Trinity College, which is probably even a more wealthy place. And I was only there because, I could play hockey a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I came out with student loans. Like I wasn't from this endless, wallet family. And so I think that's always been the back of my head where like I've seen the wealth, but I haven't had it. So that's motivated me to make money. And then I think over the last 6.5, 7 years since I've been in sales, I think the best answer to and what I can put my finger on is just like the optionality it provides in my life moving forward. That's probably why I want to make money.
Yep.
So there's a little bit on like the therapeutic, like why Jackson is the way he is, and then now I think I really encapsulate it as I just want optionality in my life.
I love that. And by the way, like our stories are very much aligned. I was very financially driven coming out of college because I spent 4 years at Cushing as a financial aid kid. And Cushing is the eighth most expensive secondary school in the world. So like you kind of spend these like really critical years from like 14, 15 to 19 kind of feeling less than, right? Like you got, and I'm sure Rivers is the same way as Cushing, but like we had kids, the CEO of California Pizza Kitchen's daughter went there and she used to get a room at the Four Seasons every weekend that people would go party at. And like I was coming from Marlboro, like, drinking Bush Lights in the woods, that we had to like scrap, like four of us had to scrap money together just to buy the 30. You know what I mean? So it definitely has a massive impact, but that's so important. And I don't know if you're married or on that track, but like I'm now there with a wife and a kid, and I still have that same drive. It's for very different reasons, but it's still there at the core, right? Like I don't want my kid to feel that way that I felt when I was 15. So I think that's important, dude. And I'm glad you shared that. Thank you.
But I do want to make one point on that because I think there's a bigger conversation about like viewpoint on wealth, and I know like my best friends are from Rivers, and some of them come from very successful families. And I know you're extremely successful in your career, and my path at Toast, I've been rubbing shoulders with a lot of people that have done very well. Right, one of the biggest IPOs in Boston history. I know a lot of people that are bad people that are poor, and I know a lot of people that are bad people that are rich, and vice
Yeah,
versa. So
totally.
I don't want to make it seem like, oh, these wealthy people were a certain type of way. Like, no, you can be
No,
an amazing person with your money or without your money. And I just want to make sure I'm calling that out. And I actually think you have more power in the community and society with money to do good if you handle it the right way.
bang on, dude. Bang on. Really, really well said. Um, So, by the way, I get why finance entered the picture for you. How did tech enter the picture for you?
Yeah, it was basically just my brother. My brother's 3 years older than me, and he
Oh,
he worked at HubSpot. So HubSpot's probably 5, 7 years ahead of Toast in their growth. And there's a lot of people going from HubSpot to toast, and I was pretty ignorant at the time, but I understood the idea of working at a pre-IPO company, potentially getting equity and going public and getting some sort of payout. And my brother just told me, he was like, you're going to go pre-IPO in Boston right now. And this is before the remote world, right? You had to actually go to the office. So I couldn't apply for a company in San Francisco. I couldn't apply to Snapchat or Zoom, right? He was like, you got to go to Toast. And so he basically, he should be a VC because he was all over it. So that's how I got pointed towards Toast.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Sometimes I'm sure you got some bad advice or as an older brother, I can say like my brothers picked up some bad habits from me, but it's always good when I hear that they picked up some good habits from me too. So that's great. What was like when you made that switch, you get the role at Toast, what were some of the challenges that you faced like immediately where you were like, oh, I was not prepared for this?
Yeah, I think there's the rhythm, right? It was just a huge life switch. I moved into an apartment in the city, a very small apartment in the city with my buddy Kyle, who actually played hockey at Dartmouth. Maybe you should get him on the show. He's a good person for you to talk to. And just getting in the rhythm of going to the office every day was a lot different than morning skate or practice, going out to eat with your buddies, and then taking a nap and then going to play a game. So I think the rhythm was really tough to adjust to. And then like technically I wasn't sound, right? Like over the last 7 years, I've learned how to kind of adapt my brain to that. But there's a lot to learn on the Toast platform. There's a lot to learn internally on how to navigate and do the job. So I think that was a pretty big struggle for me initially.
Yeah, well, when I retired from hockey, my first tech sales job was I was a infrastructure reseller, Jackson, right? So like I went from not owning a computer because I was a sociology major with a minor in art history and sign language. God
You
bless.
graduated college without a computer?
Yes, yeah. I'm old. I'm old, buddy. I'm old. I got out of school in '08. You didn't need a computer, man. Like I wrote my sociology major. I had to write papers. I'd just go to the computer lab and write papers. That's the only time I used the computer.
How did you log into your Facebook? Wasn't Facebook created by that point?
It was. We were the 8th school on it. I used my roommate's computer. And I used to put my AIM on his computer too and put my away message.
He probably loved that.
Yeah. I was talking about this last night. My away message in college was, "Are you up?" ? But like to your point, it's actually funny. Like I actually look at this as a little bit of a mistake that I made. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Like I think I over pivoted because we sold super technical stuff like networking, servers, storage infrastructure, security. We had a big bag of products, and I over rotated on the technical side. And when I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I focused more on like business acumen, like being able to have a business conversation, understanding operational cost, efficiency, how to think about like how are executives thinking about solving problems? Because like one of the things I learned in my career was like you get relegated to who you sound like. So I started talking bits and bytes, speeds and feeds. Now I'm with the technical team and like, yeah, like I can build a relationship. We can get some groundswell, but ultimately I got to get back up to that executive to get a deal done. And I missed that. It probably took me 4 years to like take a step back and be like, okay, now I need to focus on the business side of things. Did you have a similar experience?
Toast is interesting where it's a very tangible product, which I've loved
Totally.
since the get-go. I have a lot of friends that, work in tech sales and their mom has no idea what they do. But with Toast, it's where you swipe your credit card at a restaurant. Naturally, we're a lot more than that now. But everyone's like, oh, I've seen it. Like you can touch it. That helps in sales, and that helps kind of break down the barrier of like, I don't know anything technologically. Everyone needs to eat 2 to 3 times a day, and people aren't eating out more than they are today in 2024. So getting to understand like a restaurant and their operations is easier than, data infrastructure. I guess on the other side of that, though, I have realized over the last 7 years is that's actually in the minority in tech sales, right? It's like B2B to C, and it's a very tangible buyer at ICP. But most people, and in my career, there's a good chance I'll work for a company where it is just strictly B2B, and it is more selling to leaders of IT or selling to a CRO or selling to C-suite business executives. So no, and that's one of the reasons I've been at Toast for so long. It's such a tangible product, and it's at a simple level, easy to explain. But I do realize it's probably going to be a shortcoming for me in my career if I ever do pivot out of Toast in the future. Not that I have any intention to do so.
Yeah, I mean, you're out of wagon, buddy. Stay. You're on a rocket ship. You don't complain about the seat. um, I saw you did sales coaching at Harvard. How did that come about, and what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good example of how lucky I've been being at Toast and just like expanding into this network. But I got to give a shout out to former boss of mine, mentor of mine, Adam Mavrico. So he was early HubSpot and he was early Toast. So he actually just left Toast. He's a fractional CRO now. He's doing very well for himself. And I think we'll look back and he'll be one of the biggest tech sales leaders in Boston, right? I mean, he hit twice. And he didn't hit singles, he hit grand slams, right? But
totally.
He there's a sales class at Harvard in their MBA program, and it's taught by Lou Shipley and Mark Roberge. Yep. So Mark Roberge is first CRO of HubSpot, and then Lou Shipley is former CEO of Black Duck. I think he's a 5-time CEO, and oddly enough, he's a Trinity hockey grad. Yep. So Mav, a few years back, asked if I wanted to help coach for the sales class, and I don't think I could respond yes fast enough, right? And basically what it is I get 4 students a semester. They're like taking the class with Mark and Lou week over week, a couple times a week, and then they have assignments. It's about 7 to 8 assignments a semester where they hop on Gong and do a role play. They do different parts of the sales process. Make a cold call, disco, demo, longer B2B sales process, transactional, like one call close process. And they submit it to me. I watch it, I grade it in a template, and then we go over it. So it's usually like an 8-week sprint twice a year. And these people they're the smartest people in the world, right? But there's one thing that I might know a little bit more about than them, and it's sales. And they've been amazing to work with, and it's been awesome. It's been a really cool experience.
Yeah, I know Lou well. Obviously, he was at Turbo right before I joined.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and his son hires from us actually. He's out in Denver. So great man, great family. I didn't have that connection in my head, but as soon as you said his name, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. It's funny, dude. Like sales skills are life skills, and guys like Lou and Mark kind of carrying that flag at schools like Harvard is super important. Because I think there's been a massive disconnect historically. Sales, we've just done a really bad PR job, right? Like most people off the street, when you're like, what's a salesperson? You're going to hear them describe like the ratty used car salesman that's like trying to get a deal done, lying, pitching products, like, and I think like when you take a step back and you think about like the act of selling, which is, it's 2 parts. One, it's service to others. You're trying to help people achieve their goals, solve their problems. You have a solution you think can help them, and you figure it out together. You're really a consultant. The only difference between me and you and somebody who works at McKinsey is before we consult, we have to get their attention. And after we consult, we have to get their money. A McKinsey consultant doesn't have to do those 2 bookends. That's why they don't make as much money as us, by the way, because those 2 things are really hard. So that's one piece, is like the PR. The second piece is like your ability to influence, motivate, and persuade somebody else to take an action that you want them to take is going to be critical if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a coach, HR, accounting. I don't care what your career path is. If you have that skill to stand up and deliver and understand what somebody else needs and show them how taking the action you want them to take can help them achieve that thing, game over, man. Like, you're going to be in the top 1% of whatever you go decide to do. And that's like the flag that I'm trying to carry with Shift Group, right? So really, really cool to see that. I'm sure it's awesome to be in front of a room of Harvard kids and feel smarter than them.
I definitely have never been in that position, I can promise you. But Jared, that's a great point. I think you're exactly right. Mark and Lou are doing a really good job of like destigmifying what sales is. And two things to validate what you just said. Number one, they say it's their most applied for class to take at HBS because people just want to learn this tangible skill set. And then the second thing is every semester I get so much feedback and it's around like being grateful, even if, most of these people aren't going to go into a sales role. They might go into like a GTM strategy ops role to start up. But a lot of these people have their end goal to start a business, whether it's right away out of business school or down the road. And when you think about like raising money, when you think about trying to hire the best talent, right? You go down the list of what's on the checklist of starting a business. They're super grateful that they're learning how to communicate in a persuasive, fact-based, understanding the other side of the table, conversation way. And it's going to help them not just in a sales role, but in their whole career, to your point.
Yeah, I could not agree more. In that vein, Jackson, like, you grew up as an athlete. You spent basically until you're 25. If somebody asked you who you were, you said you probably were like me. I'm a hockey player. But then you get into the real world and you feel behind. You feel like I don't have things that matter now because I've been playing hockey for 25 years. But I'm sure you were like me also, that you recognize like, oh shit, like a lot of this stuff is actually really relevant. So when you think about that first like year or two, what were some of the skills, characteristics, things that like immediately were applicable to your sales career and like, I guess, business in general?
Yeah, for sales specifically, the resiliency, hearing a no, water off your back. Secondly, just similar to what I said earlier about like what I missed from hockey is putting the work in and getting a reward, and direct correlation to that in sales. So that translated. The other thing was just the coachability factor. I mean, it sounds like me and you are cut from this similar like Greater Boston cloth, where like coach is right, like listen to coach, right? You might not agree with him, but you're not going to talk back to him. You're going to do what he says, right? And so I found that when I entered my sales career, just listening to my managers and talking to my peers about what they're doing well, it's the same thing as what I was doing in hockey. Listen to my coach in terms of stick positioning, or where my feet should be on the power play, or here's how I should shoulder check before I get the puck on a breakout, right? And then also picking your peers' brains on, this guy's got the best shot on the team. How the hell does he do it? What flex does he have in his stick, right? How does he release this puck without like curling and dragging? So I think going into sales, it was very applicable. Like, hey, go find knowledge and listen to your coach and talk to your peers.
100%. 100%. That first point, the resiliency, man, like, it's obviously like, salespeople are professional losers. So like, I couldn't agree more. But I also think like just general resiliency in life, man, like it's a game changer. It's a muscle. There's two parts to it. There's like, yeah, you're going to lose. You got to look at it as a learning opportunity, but there's also resiliency also shows up when like you have to do something you don't want to do, but it's like the right thing to do for like the goals you want to achieve, and you still do it anyway. Right? It's like you don't get an immediate return on shooting pucks in your driveway in June. It doesn't show up until March when you're in the playoffs coming down the wing. Same idea in business. Like you're going to have to do a lot of hard shit that you don't want to do, and you just have to do it, like full stop. And that's resiliency. Love that, man. Coach, wanting to be coached. Love that. You're at a rocket ship. We've already kind of mentioned it. And like, I always talk to people. I'm always like, they're like, what was the key to your success? And I'm like, 50% of it was luck. Like went to the right company, right? Like I'm a hard worker. I learned a lot. I got better every day. But like, if I did what I did at a different company than Turbonomic, like you wouldn't be talking to me right now, like in the same light. So I get that. Now, so you've been on a rocket ship, but you've also been individually on a rocket ship in terms of like the amount of you've had 5 promotions in 6 years. So outside of like giving credit to Toast, building a great product, identifying a problem in the market, and like having a huge TAM, that's unarguable. And I get very frustrated when people don't own that fact. And I can tell you're a guy that gets that. But like, what else was it though? Like there are people that have been there with you that haven't had the same type of path. There are people at really great companies that don't grow in their career the same way you have. What do you think what are some of the differentiators of how you've approached things that have allowed you to follow the career path you have?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate and don't appreciate you taking my first answer out of my mouth. I have to call it out because you guys are probably going to clip this now. But no, I will say, like, I just need to make it really clear. I found a generational company. Big credit to my brother, and then there's a lot of people internally, for whatever reason, believed and invested in me. I'm nothing without that. With that said, I mean, similar to what we were talking about earlier, I've always just tried to, show up, be the best I can be a good teammate as my career's progressed, be a good manager, be someone that people enjoy working for, but also know that I'm going to push them to be their best. And hopefully they can find new levels of success with my help. I think the other thing, and Toast does a great job of this within their culture, we're always being hospitable and respectful, but like challenge the norm, right? The way Toast has grown is, all right, how are we doing things now? How can we make it a little bit better? What's our product look like now? Customers are saying it can be better. Okay, let's go build that product for them and improve. So I've never been afraid at Toast. And again, it's a byproduct of the culture to speak up when I think there's a better way to do things. Again, in a respectful and hospitable manner. I think that's really important in today's business world. And then it sounds so simple, but I just try to work harder than the person to the left or right of me, right? And the beautiful thing about sales is there's a scoreboard, right? So if you're like at least directionally doing well, right? And so it's good that at the end of the day, you can see where you stand, which is really important. It's not like a role in another part of the company where you're waiting for an annual performance review, right? In sales, you know what your performance review is going to be based off your numbers. Yes. And then I think the last few years, as I've been managing people, I don't really have any success if the people underneath me don't flourish. So really redirected my energy into making them the best they can be, seeing how high they can get in terms of, again, scoreboard, promotions, all that, professional development. So that was a long-winded answer, but those are some few thoughts I think that have helped me at Toast.
It was a great answer, and you made a couple points that I think I'm just going to call out. Like one specifically, you worked really hard, dude. Like I don't know when hard work like got out of fashion, but like, it's a little bit of the noise of social media, a little bit of entitlement. It's not generational, it's individual. The reality is like, if you want to do something special, like you have to work really hard to achieve it. And there's no like easy button, right? People, like the one comment I always make is like, I point to the light switch when people are like, what do you think the individually what you did that made you successful? And I'm like, I turn the light on in the morning in the office and I turn the light off at night. I was the first one in, last one out.
I love
that. Like that's how you got to operate, right? Even if you're in a great situation like a Toast, like to maximize that opportunity, you got to maximize your effort. So love it. Like you, I got lucky. Turbo was not my first company. I was a little bit more experienced in the space. I was fortunate because I was living in the pain that Turbo solved because I was selling infrastructure to customers. You were very lucky because you had your brother, who seems very smart, and should think about that VC route. But like most kids don't have that type of like opportunity when it comes to picking. So when you think about, a kid coming out of school right now, does the work to think about like why they want to be a salesperson, they got that financial motivation, they understand the scoreboard and why they're going to fit into that culture. What should they be looking for in a first company, Jackson? Like what is important in that first company, that first 2 years of your career? What are the qualities, characteristics that these kids need to look for?
Yeah, I'd say leaders. Like, who's your manager going to be, and like, who are the founders if it's a smaller company, or who's the VP of sales, right?
Yes.
You're working for JR, you're working for Joe Schmo Jackson. And then I would say product, right? And this happened to me where I was basically calling individuals in the Sydney area that had a certain amount of money in their, they call it a super over there, which is their 401k, or they had X amount of equity in their home. And I'm pretty sure the strategy, looking back on it now, place was a little bit interesting, let's put it that way, was just to buy another rental property with said equity or repurpose the 401k funds. So I wouldn't have joined a company like that in Boston, right? But when I was like, oh, Toast is solving a real need here. You got people operating on cash registers, not tracking any of their sales. You got people operating on Micros, which is owned by Oracle. It's been the same thing since 1990. The product was important. So for people that are coming up that are in the same position myself and yourself were in, make sure you're confident in selling it, right? And a good gauge there is you got to get on the phone, ask the recruiter, ask the hiring manager, but find someone on LinkedIn or even ask the recruiter to introduce you to someone in the role today and ask them, okay, here's the OT. What percentage of reps are hitting goal, right? And that'll give you a gauge of, what they're actually doing in current state. And then I'd also ask them about what their hiring plans are. Are they going to crank and 2x their headcount next year so your territory is a lot smaller, it might be harder to hit the goal? Or are they going into a new vertical and there's going to be more products to sell, right? So you got to figure out what's going to be in your bag, what's the market reaction to it. And then if you want to get like another layer deeper, to go back to my brother VC point, right? Like how much money have they raised? Who are their investors, right? Are these Sequoia investing it, or is the founder's uncle gave them $100,000, right? Right. Those things are important because usually VCs have a good gauge of what lookalike companies have done in the past. So, and then the last thing I'd say, more tangible. I think like coming out, I was almost hesitant to ping people that were 5, 10, 15 years older than me that were Trinity hockey grads or just people I might know in my network. It doesn't matter, right? I used to have my boss in Australia, Brent Vandenberg, works for Salesforce now. Shout out to Brett. He used to say after like a tough cold call or you get a no, he'd be like, Jackson, how many friends do you have on Facebook? And I'd be like, I don't know, 900,000. Like, great, you don't need another one. Next, right? So I know that's more so for sales, right? And like in your BDR cold calling role, or even a closing role if you're sourcing a lot. But if someone doesn't respond to you on a LinkedIn message or an email, who cares? Like their life's gonna go on, your life's gonna go on. Make sure you get in front of people, and you're gonna find people like yourself who say, "Yeah, I'd love to chat," and then they're gonna intro to you to your network, and that's how you land something good.
You don't need, I love that, man. You don't need any more friends. Next. I'm stealing that one. That's really good. It's so true though, dude. But a lot of people, I think initially you tend to take it personally. I know I did when I first started cold calling, started getting hung up on my face. I'd call people back and what's your problem? Like, it's like, dude, they're just trying to do their job. Like, move on, like it's such a,
Yeah.
what, by the way, like getting into that mindset, going back to resiliency is critical because like you're going to get kicked in the teeth way more than you're going to get someone to agree to meet with you. So you might as well just get used to it.
Yeah. What how tell me a little bit about Turbo. How big was it when you got there, headcount, revenue, and then what'd that turn into?
We were under 50, under employees, under 10 million in revenue. We were still, when I got there, we were still selling perpetual licenses with maintenance. So I got to kind of experience the move over to recurring revenue. When I left, we were over 200 million, like 750 employees. And then obviously had an unbelievable exit, that acquisition by IBM for $2 billion. So I really got to see pretty much the entire kind of path minus an IPO. And then I was a CRO at like a pre-Series A company. So I've seen pre-Series A all the way to multi-billion-dollar acquisition. I've seen everything but an IPO. So it was a cool experience. But to your point, just lucky. Like, I'm not one of the guys that's going to have a headline that says, I built outreach from 0 to $250 million. It's like, bro, no, you didn't. Like, you sold a go-to-market tool in a low interest rate environment, and there were 500 other people there that helped. So, dude, this has been awesome, Jackson. We always ask two final questions. First one is, why do you love sales, Jackson?
Why do I love sales? Pretty cliche answer, but I like the opportunity to control my paycheck. I think that was more applicable in my early days at Toast. Now, leading a team, I still, get a paycheck based off my team's performance, but it's not like what Jackson does equates to paycheck. Yep. And then I think as my career has grown, it's kind of parlayed into two other things. The upsell team where I work at Toast has turned into Toast is a big business, so I can't say a significant part of the business, but somewhat significant part of the business and the revenue we produce. And I like seeing that output and how that impacts the overall business and our earnings report. So having a, somewhat small sliver part of the business is motivating. And then I think the best part of my job, which again, I didn't start in sales thinking this, but I've had a few people that I hired out of college back in 2018 that are now, extremely successful ICs or now leaders of AEs. And that's been amazing to see. And it's not just like, oh, the LinkedIn's been updated to a new role. Like they've bought houses, right? They've bought investment properties. They've, been able to do things they never thought were possible. And again, it's not because of me. It's probably more so because of Toast. But it's been awesome to see that leading these people and helping them along the way has turned into life-changing stuff, right? You just talked about it with Turbo. It's not an overstatement, right? You work in the tech world, you work in sales, right? There's a lot of salespeople that make a ton of money, and that provides the optionality we talked about earlier. So that's probably my favorite part about it in the last couple of years.
I love it, dude. So well said. I can tell you as somebody who, bootstrapped a company, obviously I sold to salespeople. We sell to sales leaders. My first 7 customers were sales leaders that worked for me. Like, that's freaking awesome. Like, it's the best part. Full stop. Best part is seeing those people go on and become leaders themselves and make life-changing money. It's awesome. So good. All right, buddy. Last one. People always ask me, why do you guys focus on athletes and veterans? And my answer is simple. They know what it means to be dialed in. And if you want to be successful in anything, especially sales, you got to be dialed in. What does being dialed in mean to you as a sales professional?
I'd say just unwavering pursuit of being the best you can be. But my best reps, my best managers, they always want to get better, and that's alongside just being extremely hardworking. So waking up every day, regardless of how well you did, 150, 160% to goal last month, coach me. Tell me what I can do better. I can always tweak it, right? I think of it as a sales pie chart. It's like, how do you keep filling in that pie chart to be the best you can be? My best reps and managers do that. So I think dialed in, when I think about my managers and reps that are really dialed in, they just always want to improve, and that's coupled with their work ethic.
Let's go. Unwavering pursuit. I think you just named the episode right there, dude. That put that on a t-shirt, brother. Listen, like, good players want to be left alone, or average players want to be left alone. Good players want to be coached. Great players want to hear the truth, and that's what you're talking about.
Say that again? That was good.
Average players want to be left alone. Good players want to be coached. Great players want to be told the truth. Unwavering pursuit of the truth. I love it. Dude, awesome conversation, Jackson. So good to meet you. Thank you for giving us your time, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I just want to say again, amazing cause you guys are trying to tackle right now. There's a lot of people that need this sort of help, and to parlay, their first career into their second. So amazing job. And it was awesome to chat today and get to know you guys a little better.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.